Rob Castellucci is a friend. He's the president and co-founder of Roomsync, which is just a remarkably interesting and innovative company. Many of you from high school going into college will use the services of Roomsync. What I have seen in Rob in the 5 years that I've known him is a real desire to help the next wave of entrepreneurs forward. He truly cares about people and how he can help you in your path forward. So Rob, if you could please tell us about what makes you crazy. I've never seen you crazy, by the way. And how we can learn from you the spark moment in your career as an entrepreneur and how you are replenished by that spark. Ladies and gentlemen, Rob Castellucci.
I will do my best to do that, but first I have a question for you. You said never to follow an animal act. What about following a TED speaker? Am I in trouble?
Bertrude's the real deal, man.
She is, right? That was an excellent presentation. Well, thank you everyone for listening and coming here tonight. I can't see any of you, but I trust that you're all there. I can hear the pictures flashing, but these lights are quite bright. So what I want to talk about is, I suppose, my story and how I got involved with entrepreneurship. You know, I never considered myself an entrepreneur. I still somewhat don't consider myself an entrepreneur. I don't necessarily associate with that label, but Steve Jobs, if you've ever seen his commencement speech for Stanford University, if you haven't, stop listening to me and go watch that, because that is a way better speech than what I'm going to give you. But one thing that I love is he says you can never connect the dots looking forward, right? You can't tell where what you're learning here today in high school is going to lead you to in the future, but you can connect them looking back. So what I'm going to do my best is try to connect the dots maybe a little bit looking back at how I got where I am today. And number one, I come from an interesting family. My mom is Jewish, my dad's Italian. My dad was a cop, so for 20 years he was a police officer, and he also was really into martial arts. So has anyone taken Taekwondo? I feel like everyone has taken a Taekwondo class. Okay, again, I can't see you, so I'm just going to assume everyone raised your hand.
Everybody's taken
Yes, they did,
Taekwondo.
perfect.
Everybody.
Great, plan exactly like I planned. So we actually did jiu-jitsu. My dad was a jiu-jitsu guy. And I was this 6-year-old kid, and he's teaching me how to do like locks and chokes on people and breaking bones and like really, and it was actually with a very, we didn't necessarily break bones. I never broke a bone or anything. But he taught me this, and then he started to teach me to teach, and he had his own dojo. So we had these kids. I realized in retrospect that I was like his little recruiter, because I would bring all of my friends over, and we would start having classes every weekend night, or every weekend and every night, and it became this little side business where I was helping my dad had his own business. We actually did it in the basement of our house. So people would come around the basement, we would have class for an hour, and then they would go on their way, and me, my sisters, my mom, everyone became a black belt, and that was my first entrepreneurial experience, but it never really felt like an entrepreneur. It was just something fun doing with my dad, and my dad would throw me, I would throw my dad, I would fight my dad in a friendly way, of course, again. But that was my first experience, and again, never thought that I was going to start a business. Flash forward to high school. Nope, nothing happened in high school. I didn't start a business. I didn't even do a lemonade stand. Nothing really happened in high school. I'll get back to that maybe at the end, but flash forward to college. First 2 years of college, nope, nothing. Nothing was happening. My junior year in college is when I finally started to get exposed to certain things. And I guess I naturally am pretty interested in new ideas and just talking to people. And I eventually came across this club on campus at the University of Florida called the CEI Ambassadors. And these guys were just interesting people, smart people, and a couple of them had their own businesses. And honestly, I thought, well, this will probably look pretty good on my resume if I'm part of this organization to get a real job when I graduate from college. So I was there for a year. I was in the ambassadors, still no business necessarily to speak of. But from CEI, I got involved with a little company in town called Synogen. And so Synogen is a seed stage venture fund. What that means is they kind of start companies. And again, thought this will look interesting on my resume. But through that, the guy who actually runs that, if anyone knows Regeneration Technologies, he's the guy who started that, and then he started Synogen afterwards. So this guy who I was around on a daily basis ended up becoming a really good mentor of mine. And he just was this person that you get exposed to. I mean, we've all heard the phrase, right? You are the average of the 5 people that you hang around with most often. Well, that took up a big portion of my time, and being exposed to people like that on a daily basis was one additional influence towards, it was an additional influence to say, when that idea comes around, I think Pyle had mentioned this, where she had idea after idea after idea. She had a lot of different ideas. And part of it is having the idea, absolutely, but part of it is having the guts and having the interest and the feeling that is realistic enough to actually go with that idea. And that's maybe one of the big advantages that a place like San Francisco has, perhaps over a place like Gainesville, is that more people feel like, oh yeah, the neighbor does it, the guy down the street does it, why can't I do it, right? So being around more of those people, little by little, exposed me to say, okay, I can do this. By this time, I graduated from college. So I was graduating. I was in that same line, where are you, Colin? So I was in that same line at career fair, and I was doing pretty well at career fair, man. I had my resume. It looked good. I had my CI ambassadors. I had my Synogen. I was kicking it. I was having great conversations, meetings. I had a 3rd-round interview at GE doing plastics. I didn't even know what plastics were. I never told that story. I never even knew what plastics was. They brought me out there, and thank God that they did not bring me out and actually hire me, because my whole life would have been differently. Flash forward to the spring, I'm thinking, well, I'm going to go to grad school. I end up going to the Master's in Entrepreneurship program. But before I do that, I'm interviewing with Google. And I'm interviewing with Google. I'm in a 2nd-round interview with them. And if they hired me, I would have gone out there and I would have worked for Google. But unfortunately, I didn't get that either. Actually, my biggest interesting of where this would have gone is I actually got a chance to interview at Facebook. And I didn't end up taking that interview. I interviewed at Google instead. Who knows what would have happened there, too. But all of these things were kind of happening to the point where then I came up with an idea. So how many of you have jobs? Do you have like part-time jobs? I mean, hopefully all the parents have jobs, but like the kids, raise your hand if you have a job. So I had a job in college, and it wasn't anything I planned on doing for the rest of my life. It was a leasing consultant at a property in town. And during that time, what would happen is we would give out roommate assignments, because when you sign a lease there, you fill out a piece of paper saying, this is how neat I am, this is how crazy I'm going to party. And we take those pieces of paper, we match them up, and we say, okay, here's your new roommate. Then it is like we say, here's your new roommate. What's the first thing you do when you say, okay, here's my new roommate for the next year? You're going to do a little bit of online stalking of them, okay? Probably on Facebook, okay? So that's what happened. I got 30, 40 calls a day from upset parents, upset roommates saying, give me a new roommate. And so it became pretty clear that I couldn't do my job. Then it became pretty clear, well, why can't we build a business around this by saying, let's incorporate Facebook and these other tools into the process, rather than it being the reaction to the process. But again, by that time, I was exposed to these things in my life, Synogen, entrepreneurship, CI ambassadors, my dad, I guess, right, with the dojo. That I'm like, okay, this looks interesting enough to start this. How am I doing on time, by the way? I tend to ramble. I didn't do that whole boom thing. I was thinking about doing it, but I'll just talk another like 1 or 2 minutes.
I'm still amazed that your entire family is black belt, so.
Yeah, they do. Don't mess with my family. And I'm the youngest, so I always got beat up by my sisters. Yeah, I know, it's tough, right? Who knew? So we decide, well, let's start this business. And not all of these businesses, you see the Facebooks, you see the Twitters where you raise $50 million in funding and it becomes this huge thing. That's not for everybody, and that certainly wasn't for me. Bootstrapped. Right now we work with 100 colleges, universities. We are definitely self-sustaining as a business. We never took outside money. We bootstrapped. We put in $400 total. That is $100 each among my 4 co-founders. So very small amount of money. Money is not an issue. Talent, drive, skill. Now those are issues. If you don't have those, then yeah, you have to hire people to fill up those gaps. I'm not going to bore you with what happened kind of post that, right? We ramped up. It took 2 years to make our first sale. Took a while there, sticking with it while working a day job, very much like my dad was a cop doing the whole dojo thing afterwards. But what I will leave you with is in high school, okay? If I had a time machine and I went back to high school, I was thinking about this as, I was listening to almost all of your presentations, but I can't help but think, like, what am I going to say? What am I going to say? And what I was thinking, if I went back to high school, I thought of a guy I knew. Do you guys ever use GroupMe? Do you know GroupMe? Okay, and I think like WhatsApp maybe has taken over GroupMe, but GroupMe, the guy who started that went to my school. He was in my high school. I can't even remember the guy's name, okay? I'm sure I met him once or twice, but then I found out that he started GroupMe, and then it later got acquired by Skype, I believe. I guess Microsoft, I don't know what time it was on that. But I never knew him. I think in high school, I was just a little bit too caught up with cliques, right? I identified I played soccer, I played baseball. I was one of the popular kids, whatever you want to call that, right? But I don't know anyone from my high school anymore. I can't remember the last time I talked to anyone from my high school. My one best friend is the only person I talk to. Other than that, all those other people, yeah, they're good memories, but I don't really stay in touch with them because we don't share any interests. But you know what? If I met that guy from GroupMe and we talked and I wasn't so caught up with like, oh, he's a different group or whatever else you wanted to label that with in high school, I bet I would still be in touch with him, and I bet that I would have been exposed to a lot of other things that really align much more with my interests today, and that would have made me all the richer today where I talk to you now. So that's kind of my one regret from high school, is being a little bit too caught up with the clique that I identified with. So with that being said, I'm sure I'm over the 7 minutes, but thank you for your time. Thank you for this event as well. Thank you for putting this great event on. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Rob's comments made me think of a friend of ours, and many of you know who John Spence is, and John is just an invaluable source of information and insight. And John says something that I wish I heard this when I was 15 or in my teenage years. You become what you focus on and come to be like the people you associate yourself with. And listen, we realize the peer pressure that you face as teenagers is immense. But take a page from Rob's book. If you could associate with certainly you want to associate with people who you want to be like, so emulate them. But what about the people who are not like you? People who come from different cultures, who practice different religions, or who don't look like you, or they don't speak like you. If you could possibly step out of your comfort zone and just get to know them, you don't have to be BFFs, but just get to know them, I think your perspective on who you are deepens and strengthens.